The 1980s weren't just a golden era for horror. They were a psychological battleground. Long before CGI, these films burrowed into our minds with practical gore, shocking twists, and primal fears. These weren't just movies. They were experiences that left scars. One terrifying 80s horror films that didn't just entertain, they traumatized a generation. Fade to Black, 1980. Dennis Christopher's performance as Eric Binford in Fade to Black wasn't just unsettling, it was disturbingly relatable. A lonely, film-obsessed young man who finds solace in old Hollywood classics snaps one day, using his encyclopedic movie knowledge to become a killer. He murders people while reenacting scenes from his favorite films. What made Fade to Black so deeply disturbing wasn't just the concept. It was how painfully close Eric felt to real life. Many viewers saw parts of themselves in the character, yearning for validation through pop culture. But Eric's descent into violence made that connection horrifying. The use of actual clips from vintage films added another layer of unease. You weren't just watching Eric lose control. You were witnessing a twisted tribute to the very movies that defined cinema. For anyone who ever escaped into a movie to avoid real life, Fade to Black asked a terrifying question. What if your fantasy world fought back? Invaders from Mars, 1986. It starts like every kid's worst nightmare. You suspect something's wrong with your parents, but no one believes you. In Invaders from Mars, a remake of the 1953 classic, that suspicion turns terrifying when a young boy realizes the adults around him are being controlled by aliens through mind-controlling slugs. Teachers start eating frogs. Parents stare blankly with dead eyes. For children of the 80s, this wasn't just a sci-fi story. It was the embodiment of every weird adult interaction they'd ever feared. But for those who saw it, it never left their minds. That school nurse scene? It made kids fear checkups for years. Even the simple act of a parent saying, "Everything's fine," took on a whole new meaning. The scariest part, the idea that no one is coming to save you, that the people you trust most could be hiding something alien inside them. Invaders from Mars didn't just traumatize. It made every backyard feel like a potential invasion zone. The Fog, 1980. John Carpenter had just finished Halloween when he unleashed The Fog, a ghost story wrapped in a sea mist that chilled more than just the bone. But Carpenter's mastery of atmosphere turned it into pure dread. Adrienne Barbeau, as a late-night radio DJ broadcasting from a lighthouse, becomes the eerie voice of doom. Her radio alerts, swallowed by static, feel like death notices read in real time. The scene where the fog creeps into homes and churches, accompanied by eerie knocking, is iconic. It taught a generation that sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you see, but what you hear coming closer, slowly. With a shoestring budget and minimalist effects, The Fog turned the weather into a villain. After seeing it, many couldn't look at mist rolling across a road without imagining bloodthirsty ghosts lurking just behind it. Something wicked. This Way Comes, 1983. Disney isn't the first name you think of when you imagine horror, but Something Wicked. This Way Comes proved that even the House of Mouse could ruin your childhood in the best way. Adapted from Ray Bradbury's haunting novel, this eerie tale tells of a traveling carnival that offers people their deepest desires. Jonathan Pryce plays Mr. Dark. The carousel promises to change your age. The mirror maze shows your nightmares. As Mr. Dark tightens his grip on the town, two young boys realize they're the only ones who can stop him. But what truly cemented this film in the minds of its viewers were its visuals. The spider scene, where hundreds of tarantulas invade a boy's bedroom, carnival music, once playful and joyful, was transformed into a sinister melody of doom. It's one of the few times the studio leaned into the darkness, and it shows. The cinematography is dreamlike, almost surreal, like you're trapped in a nightmare you can't wake from. The emotional weight of the story, for many who watched this in their formative years, Something Wicked, This Way Comes left a lingering chill that stayed far beyond childhood. C.H.U.D, 1984. Sometimes all it takes is one acronym to haunt you for life. C.H.U.D. It was a fear that crawled out from beneath your feet and never really went away. Set in the underbelly of New York City, this grimy horror gem explores what happens when the homeless population, exposed to toxic waste, mutate into glowing-eyed monsters and start dragging people into the sewers. It's part monster movie, part social commentary, and all nightmare fuel. What made C.H.U.D so effective wasn't just the gore, it was the plausibility. The 80s were an era of urban anxiety, crime, pollution, homelessness, and government cover-ups. And this movie wrapped all of it into one horrifying package. The idea that the city's darkest secrets were literally hiding beneath manhole covers made people avoid grates on the sidewalk for years. The creatures themselves were unforgettable. Bulging eyes, deformed limbs, a hunger for flesh. And the film didn't shy away from showing them. The cinematography used darkness masterfully, because you couldn't always see the C.H.U.D, but you knew it was there. The government knew about the mutations. They covered it up. They tried to destroy the evidence, regardless of who got in the way. C.H.U.D may have started as a cult film, but for anyone who saw it late at night, especially on cable or VHS, it became something more personal. It wasn't just a horror flick. It was a reason to never trust the quiet beneath your feet again. Cat People, 1982. Few films blend the erotic and the horrific quite like Paul Schrader's Cat People, a remake of the 1942 classic. This version took a surreal approach to body horror and trauma, weaving a story about transformation, forbidden instincts, and deadly desires. Natasha Kinski stars as Irina, a woman who discovers that intimacy awakens something ancient and terrifying within her. When she's aroused, she transforms into a Black Panther. Her brother, played by Malcolm McDowell, shares the same curse. The film is drenched in atmosphere. Its New Orleans setting is sultry and gothic. The tension builds not through jump scares. And then there's the autopsy scene, when a half-digested human body is pulled from the stomach of a panther. It's graphic, brutal, and deeply unsettling. It snapped many viewers out of any romantic notions they might have had, and reminded them they were watching a horror movie of a very different breed. David Bowie's haunting theme song adds a final layer of disorientation. It's beautiful, seductive, and full of dread, just like the movie itself. The fear of what lurks inside our bodies and minds. For a generation grappling with identity and boundaries, it was both a metaphor. It wasn't just about panthers. It was about the monster you become when your deepest desires go unchecked, and the terrifying realization that you might not be able to stop it. The Gate, 1987. Sometimes the scariest horrors don't come from outer space or ancient tombs. They come from your own backyard. The Gate is a terrifying dive into suburban occult chaos, where two kids accidentally open a portal to hell by playing a heavy metal record backward. Really young Glenn and his best friend Terry discover a strange geode in Glenn's yard. What starts as innocent curiosity soon spirals into full-blown demonic warfare. Creatures crawl out of the hole. Tiny, snarling, deformed things filmed in forced perspective to maximize discomfort. Melting parents, demonic possession, and even zombified construction workers erupt from the floorboards. What made the Gate so nightmarish wasn't just the creatures. Glenn and Terry are alone, fighting against an ancient evil with only flashlights and childhood imagination. The special effects were practical, gritty, and shockingly convincing for the film's budget. Claymation demons twisted and twitched across the screen, while surreal dream sequences blurred reality and nightmare. At times, it felt like the house itself was turning against the kids, swallowing beds. For kids who grew up in the 80s, The Gate was more than a movie. It was a warning. Your backyard wasn't safe. It tapped into the vulnerability of childhood, where imagination is powerful, but danger is often underestimated. My Bloody Valentine, 1981. Nothing says romance like a gas-masked killer with a pickaxe, and My Bloody Valentine made sure no Valentine's Day ever felt safe again. Set in the quiet mining town of Valentine Bluffs, the story is rooted in a tragic legend. 20 years earlier, a mining accident occurred because supervisors left their post to attend the town's Valentine's dance. What set My Bloody Valentine apart wasn't just the kills. Filmed in a real Nova Scotia mine, the environment felt damp, dirty, and suffocating. The actors used real miners as extras, and you could feel the weight of the earth pressing down in every scene. Originally, the film was heavily cut by the MPAA, but even in its censored form, the film left a lasting mark. Horror fans were stunned at how brutal it truly was. The killer's heavy breathing through the gas mask became an auditory nightmare, mimicked later in everything from Darth Vader to Jason Voorhees. It was slow, deliberate, and terrifyingly human. For many, My Bloody Valentine wasn't just another slasher. It was a reminder that horror doesn't always wear a hockey mask. The Changeling, 1980. Subtle, elegant, and absolutely terrifying. It haunts you quietly, slowly, and then all at once. Starring George C. Scott, the film tells the story of a grieving composer who moves into an old Victorian mansion to escape his past, only to discover that something inside the house refuses to stay silent. This is a ghost story in the classic sense. Whispers in empty rooms, a wheelchair that moves without anyone near it, a red rubber ball that bounces down the staircase on its own. Simple things. What makes The Changeling so effective is its emotional weight. George C. Scott plays his role with such sorrow that you feel his pain. His grief becomes your own. When he discovers the tragic story of a murdered child buried beneath the home, the horror becomes personal. This isn't about evil. It's about justice. It's about a soul that can't rest. The seance scene, captured in one long take, is hypnotic. The scribbled words, the breathless voices. It's raw, terrifying authenticity. It's what happens when horror doesn't shout, but whispers. This film taught an entire generation that ghosts don't have to scream to terrify you. Sometimes, all they need is a music box or a bouncing ball. It doesn't want to scare you for a night. It wants to haunt you for years.